Awesome, awesome, awesome. We are here on episode 3. I am here from the power rack in the garage. Laptop is sitting on the green egg. Got bands here to do some strength training if I need to. We're about to have some strong content coming at you with a great guest, guy I've known for a long time, Coach Tim Caron, head strength coach at Allegiant Gym, been a head strength coach at Army football, worked at numerous places in college setting. Welcome, Mr. Caron.
How are you doing, everybody?
Awesome.
I'm going to go to my screen share now.
All righty.
All right, so AA hit me up a couple weeks ago and wanted to go through some concepts that, maybe would be very specific to this audience, as well as being really beneficial to everyone who may be watching it down the road. And, an area that I really put a lot of stock into is systems and looking at really, really good things that are true in everything. So AA at USC, Tim Caron at a private gym focusing on general populations, yourself at home, maybe training in your garage gym right now or training at a 24-hour fitness. No matter what, principles are going to be true in every setting. And is there a systematic way to looking at training that we can all come together and collectively agree upon? And then we can go into the nuance and the fun stuff of just putting in a specific exercise or putting in a specific protocol in the right timing or setting to really make that principle have legs and push in the right direction. So who am I? AA mentioned it. I am right now currently the head strength coach at Allegiant, which is a commercial gym here in Los Angeles. Our goal is to really make strength training really important. And it's something we feel really strongly about because we think it has the most return on investment. And we look at our counterparts out there in the industry, which may be focusing more on cardiovascular stuff or thinking more initial knee-jerk response to, hey, let's just get them tired for an hour. And albeit training hard is really important, there's some things that we find lacking and missing from that kind of approach in a commercial model. So we set out to really differentiate from the market. But the reason why we chose that is not because we wanted to be different, because we knew it was more effective. So working with AA at USC, being a head strength coach at Army West Point for the football program, working at Georgia Tech, all these things have come out through the wash of we had to do this stuff because our jobs are on the line. That we just didn't want to put this thought of doing something out there just for the sake of doing it because we liked it, is because we knew it was better for our athletes to develop themselves, to be more resilient, to reach higher levels of performance, whether it's power or speed, or looking at force development or even capacity. And then we looked at it in terms of ways we can control that to consistently getting the outcome that we want. So that's the first order of why we have this place. But the second aspect is looking at the process for, maybe this is specific to a lot of you guys out there, is I want to become a coach. In order for me to do that, the traditional method of doing that at a high level is I got to go intern. I got to travel around the country. I got to spend a lot of money. On top of it, I got to get a 4-year degree. And I got to do all these things to get to that point. Where if we really just get down to brass tacks and doing a program in an area that you live in, that you don't have to sacrifice a huge expense to move or leave a place that you really want to be in order to be a coach, but still do work you're proud of and still do work that you can relate to, that you do yourself, that is beneficial. I thought there would be a chance to do that. And the same thing with me interning for AA. I wanted to take that initiative because I knew that I was going to be able to turn that into a better opportunity for me to be a college strength coach. And I would have gone to China to go do that for him. But the end, so imagine if I could have that experience right there in my hometown or relatively close. And I didn't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to become a coach to do something I love. And I can do it with a group of people in a setting that I really, really am proud to be a part of. So as a whole, what we are right now is a place where coaches and members or just everyday walking around people can have a great experience, not only working, but training in. And the way we do that is just leveraging time-tested, proven methods of training, like strength training, and utilizing principles to get us to that end result. Because it's the same rules you have in a college setting as we have here in our private setting is, keep them healthy, train really hard, and get them to results. And those 3 steps is really what we're doing. And we think that's a more appealing way to train for not only a current member or a future member, but our staff. And I want to have a place where staff are proud to wear our logo and tell people that they work at, and then potentially have an opportunity to represent a brand that they can elevate themselves. So a college comes down the road of like, man, those guys really know how to do it. I want to hire a guy from Allegiant. Don't get me a coach, get me an Allegiant coach is something I would love to be something down the road that I could really utilize in this setting. And it makes us better in the long run. The big thing I want to go through today is principles. And you can go right to NSCA, you can go to CSCCA. They have these principles listed, and most of the certification process is opening up with this. And I think it's really easy to just to blow this off and just go right through this. But when we look at what we're doing here, we're looking at the long haul of training. Like, what is the long-term path of what we're doing with our athletes and our clients? And if I can't repeatedly come to some sort of consistent outcome, I'm probably missing one of these principles in my training. And that's the goal, right? We want to increase our volume and scale our services. So I need to get a more predictable level of outcome for the people that I'm working with. If it's just random every single time, and I'm telling the people, just stick with us, it's a hard thing to really justify to continue to invest money into what we're doing. As well as, you know what, when we're looking at like, hey, I'm coming into an off season or I'm coming into a new experience, I don't know what to do. It's a great thing to start off with, like, okay, well, how am I going to maybe attack this problem of creating a program? I think the easiest thing to do is just start off with principles. And then we build out our system off of that. And system is really just something that's repeated over and over again to get us a more repeatable outcome. And systems are based off of principles, which the definition of principles we're going to go into here is a law without context, meaning it's going to be true at USC with AA and his athletes. It's going to be true here at Allegiant with us and our members, regardless of age, regardless of experience. These principles will be true. And what I want to do in this presentation is kind of go over some practical examples that we utilize here, and maybe go into maybe some other examples that I'm not listed exactly on the slide of how we can really leverage each one of these principles in our setting and any setting. And as we walk through this, if I'm training at myself at home, or if I have aspirations of becoming a coach one day, we can all collectively come together and say, well, we need to do these things no matter what. I may change the exercise order. I may choose different equipment, right? Like I can walk in USC's weight room today, and if I had the opportunity to program there, it's going to change things because it's a different setting. I have different pieces of equipment, different space. I'm going to change the way I do it, but principles will be the same. And the same thing if AA came into Allegiant, he would have to change his program to meet the needs of his athletes here if he went to Allegiant, but you'd still have to pay attention to these principles first and foremost. So we're going to spend time in each one of these. And instead of just like giving you a verbatim definition of each one of these, I'm going to actually show you how we utilize it in our setting. So the first one is principle of individuality. AA and I do the same program, we'll respond differently. I think that's obvious, and I think sometimes we take that for granted. But it makes a big difference in terms of, one, not only how we should approach that. AA's maybe been training 10 years longer than me. AA's may be stronger in these are certain areas. I may need to have work on some of these weaknesses that I need to work on to help me get up to a higher functioning level. So we need to accept that no matter what, there's going to be certain levels of deviation from the same program, as well as we're going to respond differently based off of all the variables we bring into that program, right? So it's not only what we do before we start that day one of our program, it's what we do in between that's going to make a difference in terms of how well we respond to that. And the way I like to analogize this to our young coaches here is look at it like a bell curve, that on any given like training program, we're going to hit somewhere in some of a range from really high responders to really low responders. And the hope is that we're going to get more people in the bulk towards really good responses from the training. That's our intent. And obviously we really want everyone to reach a really high response to what we're doing training wise. But in reality, it's probably going to come on to a more heterogeneous split, meaning everyone's going to be more equally distributed. Hopefully it represents somewhat of a bell curve and we can get more people on the positive aspect. But in reality is we need to accept that if I do 5 sets of 5, myself, AA, everyone watching this is all going to respond in a unique way. based off our previous training experience, as well as the other things around us that are influencing our adaptive rates to this program. So the program I want to dive into is this program that we're looking right now in terms of servicing the needs of potentially like NFL athletes or clients with a really abbreviated timeline with very high demands, right? So one thing that we need to do is in terms of increasing variability of not only their movement system and their energy system, but we need to increase their performance markers. So everything is a lot more compressed. We know that these guys are advanced. We know they have really high fast twitch muscle fibers. We know that they have a compressed schedule in terms of not only from what they do training wise, but they're probably going to do preseason wise, but then they have millions of dollars at stake in terms of them not performing at an optimal level. So we need to figure out a strategy for that, as opposed to, let's say I got a person like, hey, I never worked out and we've been on quarantine for the past 6 weeks, kind of want to start this process. This aggressive compressed schedule changes rapidly, right? We're going to slow cook that. I'm not going to do 20 sessions in 3 weeks. I'm going to try to do 2 to 3 sessions in 1 week and see how you feel. And that process of looking at that and knowing, hey, what they did before has a huge impact on what I do in terms of deciding factors going into it based off a timeline and previous experience. And then I need to look at is, okay, what is the response rate from this? The less I know about you and the less familiar you are about training, the more conservative I need to be, the more familiar you are with training and the more capable you are, the more aggressive potentially I can be. But it doesn't mean I need to be completely cavalier with what I do. I just need to be a lot more strategic, and experience plays a really big process in evaluating this. Double A, do you have any insight on like maybe potentially how you looked at USC, like the first go around and then what you did maybe the second go around, like in relatively different off of those previous experiences at all?
Yeah, obviously, same weight room, same rack setup, same configuration. So, I think anytime you get a little break from the environment and you get some 4 or 5 years to kind of think about going back to, better utilize, make it, I think we made it, if anything, just more simple. Just try to program days where we really just stick around the rack. That way we really keep a good eye and pulse on the guys and not, supersetting so many things where we might be at the platform and then the supersets over in the dumbbell area for say, and we lose that sight line. So I think the big thing coming back, just making it actually more simple.
Off of that, when I got to Army after leaving what we did at USC, was forgetting that last year and what we did programming wise was a reflection of the 3 years before that. And we layered that in, right? Like I remember year 1, you're like, let's just start off with the basic 4. And then as we started to get more trust and more familiarity and guys felt more confident in what we were doing, we started sprinkling in like different correctives and different supersets, and we started to work in more complexity over time. And then looking at that, and like I remember when I programmed first off, like I had to like not think of what we finished off with that USC. I had to think about what we started with. And that process too is the same thing we're asking ourselves to do in this situation, is looking at it. Not only do we have athletes who are not familiar with what we're doing, the second aspect is potentially maybe I'm not enough as a coach right now in this setting to provide that level of complexity yet. And I need to build that up systematically over time, right? And it's like this buckshot approach that you look at in training. I'm just going to throw a million things at people and see how they respond. We can't really interpret that information in the after fact. And, that period of debrief and evaluating your effectiveness of your program can really be simplified if we just start off with simple and then expand out in terms of complexity and other things that we can add to it, which really cool in that, because it just automatically dawned back to like when I got to Army, like year 1, like let's just keep it simple. And then as we go, like at the end, we had 7 different programs going at a really high level. And I think it's a process of starting off very simply and then expanding out our offerings in terms of breaking inside and outside the box, different developmental levels between what we called, our base program, Bravo, Alpha, and Elite. And that didn't happen day 1. And as I reflect back off of that situation, that was a really good point. So I'm going to go into our next slide here in this concept of specificity. So we can look at specificity in a bunch of different ways, right? We can look at sports specificity. So AA is training football. I can look at my situation. I'm training a general population. So like in AA setting, like he needs to get his guys prepared to play the game, right? They're going to need to play 12 competitive games, how many practices, and then go through that period of competitive season at the highest possible level. Where me, I need to effectively train our members walking around, just want to look better and feel better, and knowing that training is in effect actually the goal. Like we're going to train every week of every single year. So it's a different context altogether. But when we look at specificity, we want to just look at it in terms of it just saturating in that specific thing that we need, right? It's finding a KPI or a correlate and then building out the program to reach that correlate or key performance indicator as rapidly as possible, as efficiently as possible. And the terms we really lean in on here in our setting, which is universal, is this concept of accumulation or intensification. And when we look at accumulation, essentially it's just high volume, low intensity, right? So with that outcome, I want to improve someone's body composition, or I want to improve someone's fitness, or I want to improve someone's lean muscle mass. So I should, in some way, shape, or form, have some sort of ratio of higher volume and lower intensity. Not saying that we're not training hard, but relatively speaking, if I'm doing a set of 10, I can't really do that at 90%. I want to accumulate more volume and as high intensity as possible. And I want to do that specific to the needs at hand, but there's going to be a trade-off there. And then we look at intensification, you just flip it, right? We go high intensity and lower volume, right? So if I want to do 90%, I can't necessarily do the same volume I could have done at 60%. And the outcome there is going to be relative to increasing velocity or increasing relative strength or increasing absolute strength. And the goal there is a little bit different, right? We know that we can lean in on these specific qualities and really see, what is it that comes through? And this concept really comes from block periodization and a guy by the name of Isserin, where he really looked at like, how do I peak Olympic athletes with a very one-dimensional or very obtuse thing that they need to do to be successful in their sport. So the sport that he wrote extensively about was Olympic rowing. And if they were doing 1,500 meters, that last peaking block should look, feel, and smell like that 1,500 meter sprint they may have to do, right? Or whatever distance they had to go. And then we just work backwards and we start to look through what we need to do from a needs analysis at the beginning, and then try to progress to hopefully hit that peak with momentum and really driving up a positive adaptation. Now, we can look at a linear periodization approach and go, okay, I'm going to high volume, low intensity, and then I'm going to slowly change that to high intensity, lower volume. I can look at it undulating form, where I'm going to go accumulation in one block, intensification, and just battle back and forth. But the thought is like not a matter about periodization and how we're looking at it. It's just looking at this simple concept of what do they need to do and how can I effectively load them up strategically to get them to that outcome as rapidly as possible, as safely as possible. So the first example we're going to go through here is a accumulation block. And this should be near and dear to our guy, Big Dog, based 40s, right? We're thinking accumulation block right here. So I'm going to minimize here. I don't know if this is blocking me, but we're looking right here. This is what we term an accumulation block. And as we go through an accumulation block, it should have higher volumes, right? So if we're doing essentially 5 sets of 8, 5 sets of 8, start counting the reps, 80 reps, 5 sets of 8, 5 sets of 8, another 80 reps, and then another 5 sets of 8, and then we're working up lower body stuff or some more accumulation stuff. So we start to get in some different things. All of a sudden now this volume is huge, right? We have a ton of stuff in there, right? Like 160, 320 reps in a training session in a 45-minute period is dense. There's a lot of volume in there. I can't, in effect, do a ton of intensity in that. But what's the goal here? We have to improve our body composition. We have to improve our fitness. We have to add lean muscle mass. That's what specificity is all about in this context. Albeit I still want to be really strong, I just need to manipulate the variables to get me to that outcome as rapidly as possible. And we're going to go through progressive overload here next and what this looks like week to week. But as a whole, it should look, feel, and smell like I want to be out on that specific outcome. Conversely, we have an intensification block. So again, we're looking at this intensification block. So again, higher intensity, lower volume. And then I'm going to choose exercises that have higher threshold. Like let's say I'm going to do a barbell back position split squat on A1 and practice one here. But more importantly, I want to use a set and rep scheme that's going to allow me to utilize higher and higher intensities. and I want to go lower reps so I can put more and more weight on the bar, or move at a more rapid velocity. And then it could tie that into more dense movements, like a really, really complicated exercises, like a front position barbell split squat. It's going to get a huge motor unit threshold kind of continuum. And sometimes it's going into something, doing a higher loaded movement like a back squat. Sometimes it's just looking at a complexity movement. And we'll talk about in progression, simple to complex is not about going light to heavy. It's about increasing balance components, about increasing velocity, about increasing complexity. There's a lot of things that go into progression. And as we look through towards specificity, it's knowing where I need to be and then just saturating in that specific quality as much as humanly possible. Double A, I want to take a pause here. Like, is there anything you guys did in your winter program based off of what you looked at during the competitive season that you're like, yeah, we need to hit this? And there's any examples that you thought were really specific in your setting that we thought would be beneficial to go through now?
Yeah, obviously, it was really unique because we joined back in March last year, so we started the first week of spring ball, so we missed the whole winter program of the training in 2019. So coming off the season, knowing we're going to get it, and knowing we had approximately about 7 weeks, we were excited to get in some of this, like you said, some of this volume, some of this work that really starts building the base as the year goes. So we definitely worked in the base 40s, and it's hard work for the players when you're doing base 40s on bench press, base 40s on squats, on front squat, all kinds of different movements. I mean, they feel it. I mean, they come in, they're sore, they're tired, and they know it's just you really just can't get around the work that it takes. So I think our off season, we based a lot on just, getting a lot of work done, a lot of sets and reps, and we counted a lot of our reps each day and kind of kept the total counts going. And we were pretty surprised to see them just, adapt to it and continue to come in and just be able to take it a little farther each time. And like I said, I think the athletes are just, they're going to do what you let them do or what you have them do. So, we took them, I think we took them to a pretty good place. And like I said, we jumped right into spring ball and got one practice in, and then we all had to take off back to our houses for a while. So, we're excited to where we were going, and obviously now there's a break in the process. So, going back, who knows when? It's definitely going to be a push the reset button and reanalyze the athletes and start somewhere over.
Yeah. What I was thinking about there too is I think so much times, like, we think specificity is exclusive to like physiology, right? Like, I got to get them something, but there's a psychological component to it too, right? Where, we can create behavior modifications towards a goal that we know is a limiting factor, right? So being on time, like, there is a period where you want to focus more on the structure of it. Like, right? Like, we're going to take a hit in the weight room to ensure that everyone knows to be on time and to respect this process. And that's being specific to the needs, right? Like, if you guys are really struggling for the accountability aspect, it's smart to prioritize that. And it's smart to go, okay, there's going to be a trade-off in terms of the training. I'm not lowering my standards, but I can't hit a huge volume day that's going to take me 120 minutes if we're spending 15 minutes every day going over the importance of being on time. And I think you just look at specificity as a faceted approach of, like, psychologically, physiologically, like, that you have to do these things in a specific order and saturate in these periods of time to get that outcome that we want. So awesome there. So we're going to go into progressive overload here next. And this one for me is near and dear. And I think if I have anything that I really like bring value to, like, departments, is finding creative ways to progressively overload. So there's 3 ways which we can progressively overload anybody. And there's 2 subcategories off of each one. The first one is the most familiar, intensity, where we look at, we can increase absolute load. So I'm putting more weight in the bar over week, or I can increase velocity, which is moving the bar at a faster rate relative to the way I did the previous week, right? So that's one way. Then we make our way to increasing volume, and I can add either sets or I can add either reps, right? So we look at a lot of body weight oriented exercises. We add repetitions each week. So I did 5 pull-ups this week. I'm doing 6 pull-ups next week. You know, Double A actually just walked me through the program he's going through. He made a volume progression by adding repetitions or doing the same work done in less period of time. So that would be a repetition-based progression. Then we could actually look at sets, which is a huge impact on overall tonnage in terms of adding volume, right? So if I'm doing 5 sets of 5 one week, and then the next week I do 6 sets of 5, relatively speaking to doing 5 sets of 6, essentially adding 6 reps versus 30 reps. That's a huge difference, right? In terms of overall tonnage, that's going to have a huge systemic impact. And then the final way we can increase some sort of volume or some sort of progression of overload is doing things at more density. And we can look at density in 2 ways. I can do a compression, meaning I'm going to do the same work, so 5 sets of 8 done faster, or I can do escalating. I'm going to do 20 minutes of sets of 8, and each week I'm trying to do more volume in that period of time. So let's dive into a specific example here of each one of these, and we'll go over potentially what that may look like from a 4-week progression, right? So as you can see here, this is going to be an example of a dynamic effort cycle that we may have done at our gym, right? And the goal here is to move that weight week over week faster, right? So we'll look at A1. We have chain front squat, we got chain bench, and then again, sorry, that's a typo. That should be pull-ups. So if we're looking at these first 2 exercises, we're looking at chain front squat and then chain bench. So we're going to put a fixed weight in the bar, and then every week we're going to say, do that weight the same, but try to do it faster collectively over the course of those sets that we have prescribed, right? So 10 sets of 3 at 70%. We're going to try to progressively move that bar faster week over week over week to get some sort of intensity kind of breakdown. Obviously, we can add weight here, but I thought it'd be a little bit better to break off from that and look at it from a different perspective in terms of intensity. The next example we'll be looking at increasing some sort of density, right? So this is an escalating strategy, and we're doing 20 minutes. We're going to do a fixed set or fixed rep scheme, and then we're going to try to accumulate more sets, right? So you see here, there's no sets prescribed for heels elevated back squat paired up with chest supported row. We're going to do sets of 8 with a 3-0 exo tempo, meaning we're going to go down for 3 count, come up fast. We're going to try to increase week over week how many sets I accumulate in that 20-minute period. So week 1, let's say I get 5 sets. Great. Awesome. Next week, we're going to try to get 6 sets, then 7 sets, and then 8 sets. Now, we're not changing the weight. We're not changing the speed. We're just trying to do it more volume done in the same period of time. Conversely, we could look at it. Let's say I was going to do 5 sets of 8, like we talked about in the example and before it, is we can look at now of really trusting and relying on, like, there's not just one way to skin a cat here. We can add in another variable like compression. So I want to do 5 sets of 8. I felt like that would be a better thing for our athletes to be more familiar with. I'm going to say week 1, we're going to try to do this in 10 minutes. Week 2, let's try to do it in 9 minutes and 30 seconds. And then week 3, let's try to do it in 9 minutes and 15. And then week 4, we're going to do it in 9 minutes. The final aspect we're going to look at in terms of progressive overload is volume. So in this example, you can look at this like a 5-3-1 type approach, or we can look at it like we're going to keep the same weight on there. We're going to try to hit that same weight for more reps. So maybe we look at, we're going to hit this first week as an open set, where we just tell them we're hit it for 3, right? We think 80% for 3 is going to be a really good test for you week 1 while we get acclimated to this, right? And then week 2, we want to keep the weight the same, but add another repetition or gain some sort of a repetition based off of what I did the previous week. And then the final week, we're trying to systematically add another rep, right? You see this all the time with pull-ups and dips and things that are more body weight and orient. So we can think now in terms of this practice of, I'm now provided really 3 big levels of progressively adding something to someone's system, right? So that same thought of, I can absolutely add intensity whenever I want. That's the back pocket ace in the hole. I can simply say, we're going to start here. Every week, we're going to progressively add some sort of increase in weight to the bar. But there's a bunch of other ways we can do this. Now, word to the wise here, and there's a really good resource by Anthony Tillo, talks about singles, double, and triple progressions. Actually, it was utilized a lot by Arthur Jones as well. You want to narrow your focus to a single progression, meaning I want to choose one of these as opposed to choosing 3 at one time, because it's hard to determine where really the rates of adaptation are going, as well as what really made the progress in. So I want to pause right here. Is there like a time-tested, proven method of progressive overload that you really like and you really know that's going to be like successful for you?
Big one that I've always used, especially I think in season, is kind of the +1 method. So for example, instead of say bench pressing, trying to get 80% for 5, say after camps, it's a pretty good set, like a strength set to hit. So we might come in on our first time we touch 80 and do 3 with the guys, knowing this is a weight they'll probably be able to get. They're going to stay engaged. And then the next week we hit 4 with it, and the next week 5. And it took us 3 weeks to get to that 5, but we did it step by step. And just by adding that rep each week. And then you might start your next load phase with 85, again, go back down to 3, 85 for 4, 85 for 5, and slowly build them up in small steps. It's kind of as a way I know we did it in season.
And you look at it coming off of preseason where, everyone is just survived, so to speak, where it's like training and strength becomes a secondary thing that, like, although be it we love and we still want to be really good at, but then coming in week 1 of like, hey, you should be able to hit 80% for 5 can be intimidating and daunting. And you're going to see a lot of bars hitting chest and a lot of people pulling it off. So you go, let's ease back into this. We're still going to hit that intensity. But
it's the worst way
to,
for the psyche for them to come out of camp for 3 or 4 weeks. And their first day back, school starts, you got your first opponent and you have 80% for 5 and you fail. You're telling yourself right there, wow, camp got me. I'm weak. I'm already weaker. I lost 5 pounds. So now not only lost my body weight, golly, my freaking upper body strength, it sucks now, and now you put a kid in the tank in the first week versus your opponent.
Yeah. And then you go to them, like the greatest feeling in the world is they come out and they smoke 80 for 3 and they go, I know I could do more. Like, I know you could. Let's wait till next week. And then they hit 80 for 4 and then they hit 80 for 5. And they're like, they feel 1,000 times better than just going out there and hitting 80% for 5 week 1. And it's 50-50. We don't know how we're going to hit, going back to that standard distribution, so that person that you intentionally held back versus that person that you just coerced that strength back into them. It's powerful, man. It's a huge deal. All right. So let's move on to progression, right? So block to block, movement to movement, there's a thought of like progressive overload. We want to systematically increase in terms of intensity, volume, or density week to week or block to block. We talked about specificity where we want to saturate in high volume, low intensity, or high intensity, low volume. Now we want to think about like, I got a person who's never trained before, or I got a person coming off a preseason, or, I want to peak someone. We want to think about what progression or order or sequence of things we need to get to, right? And that simple thought of like simple before complex, right? And simple is like more grounded, more balanced, right? If I'm lying on my back, I'm definitely more balanced than being on one leg with something very unstable in my hand, right? And not saying that we're going to do that, but saying we can kind of get that continuum, right? We can look at, hey, I want to start off with something slow and heavy and progress maybe something light and fast. That would be a form of progression. There's in track and field, there's this long to short, short to long, which I think is a really cool way to describe progression, right? Because what you're saying is I have an end in mind, I invert where I want to be, and then I work backwards. And then I look at what can they do today? What are they going to be effective with today? How can I immediately have success? And as I add more and I learn more, we can become more competent as we go, right? So our freshmen aren't doing our senior level program because we don't know how they're going to respond to the movements. We don't know what their high school program may have done. So I got a person coming over from a cardiovascular focused type of training, and they say, hey, we're going to do these multi-joint compound movements done to pretend to progressive overload. They're really going to struggle with all that level of complexity to it. So I need to start a little bit more simple. So this is what it would look like, right? And in our setting, we're going to come in and we're going to say, hey, let's just see how you move, right? And this is an example of our strength program. And the way we like to define it, it's not less than, it's just less complex, and just going off that definition. It's more grounded, there's more balance, it's a little bit slower. We like to chunk our exercises in the way to describe it. So I instruct our coaches of like, say A1, A2 before you say B1, B2, and we're going through our team program here next. But The thought is that they're not as familiar with the stuff. So we need to deliberately slow down. We need to deliberately find things that are a little easier to grasp and they're going to have immediate success with. And also too, looking at like a needs analysis, right? So we feel like our strength members would do really well with more mobility, more pillar work, or another term would be core, and do really well with movements that have a high governor on it, meaning that we can't hit these incredible loads that are going to restrict or change that movement pattern, right? So we'll choose stuff like goblet squat over barbell back squat. We'll choose stuff like a barbell inverted row over a bent over row. And that thought process is something that we really have had a lot of success with. And we're going to pick simpler sets and wraps, right? We're going to do 4 sets of 10, or we're going to do 5 sets of 5. And that thought process too, it's just a little bit more familiar. We're thinking progressive overload, right? We're thinking either we're going to add a rep or we're going to add weight. You know, it's very simple. Where our team class, we might add in different levels of complexity and do single and double progressions, which as we progress, then we go to team and we think about like just the amount of numbers on this card, relatively speaking to this card. This could be daunting for a new person that's maybe just getting back into training, or maybe is coming off an injury and going into the situation where like, I don't know, man, this seems pretty intense. We're seeing big loaded movements, or seeing them done really fast or really in a complex order or sequence. Distilling it down to something that person can be successful on any given day from day 1 all the way to day 1,000 is the thought of progression here. And we could look at it from a peaking standpoint of like, you know, what we talked about in block periodization, you know, where I'm going to go long to short. Okay, well, I'm going to finish off with something short and fast because that's what they need, right? I'm going to build in a base, or reverse it, right? They're going to run 100 meters. I need to get them really good in their top end velocity. But that thought process of like figuring out what is the appropriate order or sequence of events to get to that peak is that. And in our setting, we don't know a lot about the people before they come in here. They have the autonomy to come and sign up whenever they want. So we want to be really conservative and really focused on having high success. But we do this all the time. And it's the same thing I did with a freshman coming in from a high school that I knew nothing about. And they could tell me all about their program they ever did. And they could tell me their amazing accolades they did in high school, until we get them under the bar and we realize whatever that was does not pertain to what we're doing in here, or at least to the standards which we want to do. So we always thought, let's give them some success. And they come up to me and it goes too easy, or man, I can go heavier. Like, I'm thinking, great, I have room for improvement. They're thinking I need to go harder right away, which is an amazing feeling. And temperance and patience to get me to that outcome that I want safely, that's huge. Double A, do you have any like insight on like, you know, potentially some of the freshmen you've had come in January or last year, and, you know, some of the stuff that you may have started with them, and then what it looks like comparatively speaking to some of your upperclassmen?
Yeah, I mean, I think very similar to when you were here with me. You know, you really took that part and ran with it, and obviously got the interns involved, letting them get a little bit involved in the teaching too. So we kind of treat them very similar now. As far as their structure, we bring them totally separate, obviously away from the team. This year, we kept them totally away from the team for the entire 7 weeks. So we train them in the morning, and the team train in a couple sessions in the afternoon. And Big Tony level 3 was he kind of took the lead on this, and basically he had a certain amount of basically barbell patterns that he wanted to groove every day. We had them in the same order. And just repetitions, minimal weight. And just so they really learn the concepts of bending, hinging, you know, overhead pressing, pulling up, those types of things over and over and over. And it was very classroom oriented. You know, if an athlete picked up the bar wrong, stop what we're doing. Did I teach you to pick the bar up that way? No, let's, you know, just really reinforcing. It's almost like going to like a swim school or something. They're going to teach you the same strokes and the same things over and over and over and reinforce it just so you really learn it. And then we would also set up something at the end, kind of like you're talking, to where as much as you know, we want them to get the feel that they got something out of this. Not only they learn something, but they, you know, we want to make them walk out of the weight room going, wow, that was tough. So at the end, we might set up some circuit where, like you said, it's a goblet squat, it's an inverted row to the bar, and then it's a close grip push up. And then how many, you know, it's set of 10 at all 3 spots, and how many rounds can you get in say 8 minutes or something, and put the workload, or put a partner on the inverted row and the other partner on the push up, and they just have to flip flop back and forth for an entire 8 minutes. Just to, like I said, we just wanted them to feel, after all the teaching, that they actually train hard to.
Yeah, and it's really cool about that because like you have guys who've gone through the process and you have guys that you've worked through those steps with. And in effect, like you can see your senior over there with the freshman who's still learning how to pick the bar up and still learning, how to like organize stuff and not to like, just disappear. They're not waiting around for those guys. So you can get right to work with the upperclassmen because they're ready for it emotionally, cognitively, and physically, and that, I think that's a process we all effectively go through. And we look at progression, not as a way to like anything other than just being very specific to the audience in front of us. And like, if we're coming off an injury, like there's a rehab process and there's a progression to it. If they're just getting started in a new program, just like orientation, right? Like I go, you hire me tomorrow, you're going to send me over to HR and I got to go to the orientation. Like I'm not going to go right into coaching a speed group and like, hey, you got this group over there, figure it out. Like you're going to slowly interject me into that, right? Like, and that process is it's everywhere. Progression is everywhere. And I think we learn that over time. And, what we really need to realize there's a principle behind it. And we need to accept that it's true, right? In anything, right? So really, really awesome. Okay. So we're got a couple more here and then I'm going to stop. And then obviously we'll move on. But these last two, I think, are really about management and really about the bigger picture about like, we have one aspect of the work side, and then we have the other side of it as the recovery side. But there's two concepts. There's minimal effective dose and there's maximal intended benefit. Minimal effective dose is what we're thinking about in terms of the study of hormesis. How do I apply stress and not overdo it, right? We need to be really conservative on one end of the spectrum. And the less we know, the more conservative we need to be. And then the other end of the spectrum is how do I accumulate as much of whatever it is I'm doing, whether it's accumulation or intensification, in that specific direction to get me to that endpoint as rapidly as possible. And where I think diminishing returns is not this reframing of going, never overdo, only think about the minimal effective dose. I think about it as, do I have fail safes in my programming or governor that never allows me to surpass the system's capability of recovery? And I break this down into two forms, either an intensity focus or a volume focus. And again, very similar to what we talked about in progressive overload, we prescribe 5 sets, let's say we do 6 sets of 3, and we're looking to hit it at 1 meters per second to 1.3 meters per second, or we want to hit it at 80%. Let's just say that's 100 kilos to keep it simple. We get to the 4th set, and all of a sudden I move that bar at 0.8 meters per second. Hey, what happened? I lost focus. Quick fix, dial in, lock in, you got this. Next set, okay, it was 1.2 meters per second. Great, we're good, we're back on. No need to stop, just re-engage them. Versus if the next set they come back and they go even slower, probably not helping what we're looking to do. So you have to make two choices. Do I need to go lighter or stop? And depending on your setting, you have to make either one. If I have like elite level guy that's going to have a chance to make millions and millions of dollars, chances are I'm probably stopping. If I have a person I'm trying to develop and I'm trying to push past the threshold, I'm going to lighten the weight and hold them to a higher standard. Now I can do the same thing in terms of load, right? I'm going to hit 100 kilos. We're going to hit this for 3 reps. If you don't hit it, you don't hit it, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now we can look at it from the other perspective of volume. We can stretch this out, which I think is a little bit more pertinent. And this is something as we look through why we set rep ranges and we tell everyone, as long as you're in that range, you're good. Just don't drop below that range. You'll see stuff like 6 to 8 reps. And the goal is to hit 40 reps or a certain total time under tension. If we miss that mark, if I do our 4th set and I can only hit it for 4, again, it's the same outcome. Do I need to lighten the load so they can hit 6 to 8 reps? Or do I need to stop? And depending on the audience in front of you. Let's say I'm trying to hit a specific time under tension, right? And you can see this. We're going to do a 5-0 exo tempo, so 5 second down for 8 reps. And that's 40 seconds of time under tension. And then that person all of a sudden only hits it for 30 seconds. Hey, was it a focus problem? Do you need me to count for you? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's on me. I need to hold them to a higher standard. Or is it a matter of, hey, I need to trust that you're doing this. I got 75 other guys in this room that need to collectively understand the objective, and you're missing the mark. Lock it in, get it done. And I think it's a matter of perspective. So if I look at it like, yeah, I could be conservative, like, okay, like best case scenarios here. I know everyone on this day could hit 5 sets of 5 at 70%, versus if I can hit 5 sets of 5 at 85%. I just need to know when to stop individually based off of how they're responding, or know when to lighten it up. And then I have a much different effect. Maximal intended benefit versus minimal effective dose. Now, what does this look like? So we have that volume component, right? So this would be an example of a mechanical drop set. So a full set is going to be 18 reps, and we're changing the position to get towards 18 reps, right? So I want to get maximal load on that guy. But let's say that we go heels elevated front squat, they rack it and they pull the bar out into a front squat and they just go flat footed, and then they rack it and then they go to back squat and their legs are dead. It's a third set that can only, or the second set, and they can only hit it for 2. That is a volume adjustment. They missed the mark. They couldn't hit all 18 reps. So what I need to do is make a decision. Hey, how you feeling? Do you feel like this third set's even worth it? Like in my world, I try to like position them where they have autonomy. Maybe in the athletic world, I have a little bit more control and a little bit more say of like, you're going to rack the bar and go lighter and finish the set. But depending on what I want the long-term aspiration to be. And I look at that from the perspective and the lens of what is the goal? It's to hit 18 reps so I can collectively get to the point where I can hit that whatever physiological outcome. Now, the next side is an intensity, right? So again, looking at meters per second and intensity. Is it supposed to be 1 to 1.3 meters per second? And if I hit that or not determines whether I'm going to get that outcome, right? So I did a needs analysis. I realized this person is plenty strong. I need a little bit more velocity focus with that person. So I need them to hit 50% between 1 to 1.3 meters per second, or maybe even faster. And at week 1, we're rolling. Week 2, we're rolling. Week 3, I'm getting a little tired. I'm losing a little focus. And I get to that 5th set and I move it at 0.8 meters per second. Hey, like we got to hit this for a certain speed. If not, we're missing our objective. I just wanted to go really heavy. I wasn't feeling this anymore. You don't get the point. It's not a strength problem. It's a velocity problem. Or alternatively, I lost focus. Lock it in, go lighter, go faster, but know the objective. And I think that part of diminishing returns allows us to stick to that course. AA, you actually have a really patented program, the 1,000 rep program, right? Which I think is an amazing, like just thing to go through, right? Or like we can even look at it from the hypertrophy circuit you actually put through at Ole Miss, right? Week to week. And I remember you talked about a really famous story of the first time you took Troy Polamalu through that workout. Like you walked out, thank you. Like this is like a huge aspect for us. Like week over week, like, you really focused on accountability with like, I remember the first time you took it, like you weren't letting me leave there until I did 1,000 reps. Like, what is your frame on like these like benchmarks of your program and holding to a standard that is really important?
I mean, to me, it's just I've always just wanted to plan something out and then go work the plan. And years ago, just writing out some stuff that when you start adding up sets and reps and supersets and high reps and some strength reps mixed in and things like that, just those are just certain things that I like to throw in there, every now and then, once or twice a year, just to more test myself, just as going, hey, I could do this 7 years ago. Can I still complete 1,000 rep upper body training session? And it's just more like it's an ego and a pride to go do something like that. And obviously you walk away, you feel satisfied, obviously you're sore for several days, and things like that. But it's probably just a little bit more prideful thing to write some of those things and to be able to basically say I conquered it. And it's also just fun. It's a curveball to what you normally are doing. It's a curveball on your psyche, those types of things. So that's more of the method behind it.
I think that's a perfect segue into this next aspect, this principle of detraining. And when we look at it, you get a big fancy, annual cycle like this, and it has your ebbs and flows. And this is one that we look like, on our year 1, right? But when I think about it, like you look at our blocks here, we do undulating periodization with our team class or advanced or more complex training program. I think it's about reframing and looking at the goal, therefore, is to train and improve upon your training. And we look at the long-term trajectory of what we're doing. Yeah, we want to zero in on what we need for our athletes and our clients. And we want to objectively put in things that get us to that goal as rapidly as possible. But when we really, really break it down, we're going to get there through the quality of the work or the input that we put in. and then compartmentalizing it, saying the goal of this month is to do 1,000 reps. And my job, albeit it's going to be a really hard month on me, is to get you through that. And a large part of that is, one, to holding you accountable to that. And then two, knowing that you know the objective, right? Like, you want to lose weight, you want to improve your body composition, it's going to be a lot of mechanical work. So we need to really establish 1,000 reps done in this time frame is really going to get us there most effectively. And you're paying me, or I'm being paid, to make sure you reach that mark. And then we move on to the next goal, this little mini goal, right? So that process of looking at it like, yeah, the end or point B of whatever this part over here on the end, like, all right, we're going to use weight loading to peak in preseason to get us ready for a camp and really maximize whatever quality it is. Awesome. Great. But in between that, for this to be effective, all the blocks before that need to be really, really good. And this is the entire construct of off-season training. The reason why we progress as an industry, and starting in January and being paid to work with our athletes in periods that our other coaches are going off and recruiting, or now that I have a commercial business that actually trains people year round, is this concept of, if we don't do it, we lose it. And it's a long training period. 8 weeks in the winter may not seem like a long time, but trust me, week 6, week 7, week 8, you earn whatever you're making in those weeks to motivate your athletes and inspire your athletes to get through. And your willingness to uphold those standards during those periods of time is what really differentiates you. You know, and I look at now, I got 53 weeks a year that I got to train people. I didn't know it was 53 weeks in a year. I never really paid attention until you write out 13 training blocks. You know, and that process of evaluating that, like, my God, it's cumbersome. But the quality and what we get people effectively, and not only that, get in there safely, is predicated off of compartmentalizing it and looking at it every block. And a specific sequence is the product of what we're capable of doing and the quality of the input. And AA, like, you've always preached quality and making sure that, yeah, we need to have a really great plan, but we need to really work that plan. And I believe you just said it, but, like, you know, is there any insight in terms of that, like, working the plan, that you think would be really valuable for the listeners out there?
Yeah, I mean, we try to talk about it all the time, working the plan, and you know, ideally for me, and a training session, I think it's checked off and it's put in the file as complete as you know, we talk about the staff that, you know, did you feel that all the sets and reps that you know, were with the athlete, you feel like, number one, were they all done? You know, and number two, was the reps quality? Thinking obviously, you know, cleans having great execution, great, you know, explosiveness, you know, squats having great posture, great depth, every rep. You know, if you're doing sets of 5 and one rep is a little off, and you know, and you're training at 4 out of 5 reps are good, and you do that throughout the day, you trained at 80%. You know, you could have had 100% check off complete and done well, but really it was around 80%. So you put that in a football season, that's about a 9-win season right off the bat. You know, sometimes you have to, you know, put it in things like numbers and percentages and let them know, like, one bad rep of every set, it counts, it really leads to this. And it's very eye-opening. So the ability to put, you know, that card up and that training session that day, and to go home and feel good and put your head down on a pillow and feel really good about what was done was, you know, how do you and your coaches know that things were done and they were accountable and things were quality? So that's something we strive for every day.
Yeah, you really hit that home for me personally in season, where this is our longest, most uninterrupted training block we'll have all year. We got 4 or 5 weeks of preseason, and then 13 to 14 weeks of in season. And then we go into a 3 to 4 week postseason, right? And, like, you add that up, there's no period of time throughout the calendar year that can compete with that. And we might have 2 cracks at them that week. So each one of those 45 to 60-minute sessions, 120 minutes, needs to be really, really good. You need to have objectives. And I always look at it this way, like, know what you need to do and do it at the highest possible level. It takes a lot of courage, right? Because you're putting yourself out there. Like, I have said that this is going to be the strategy for us to effectively help this program. And I could kind of go in kind of a generic blanket approach of, like, yeah, we're kind of on there, or I can get very specific. And with that coming said, I need to hold them to that standard. That's a reliability component to really get us to that validity component. All right, so I'm going to close it out here. You know, when I look at what we do here collectively, it's the same, right? We're all putting in systems in place to get us to an outcome that's repeatable, that's the best interest of our clients or athletes. What we want is that place that customers can have the expectations of high standards and high results done safely. And our coaches understand that, they appreciate that we can collectively come together and put our heads down on the pillow at night, knowing I did everything I possibly could based off of what that customer or that athlete expected of me. And at the end, people appreciate that. And your training, you hold yourself to that standard. The people around you is holding you to that standard. I would take more time and invest and look at, like, all of our previous training programs. Are we paying attention to those principles? Start at the top and work our way down. You know, if we're not, then we're kind of disobeying a principle of nature. And there's something in terms of recourse that could happen from that. Now, some of the stuff may be so obvious, not even worth going through, but I think it's even the more obvious things that are probably going to be more revealing of why you're not getting what you want consistently. And this stuff is applicable not just in training, but nutrition, in conditioning, in speed development. They're always going to be true. Mobility, you know, going through all these things has a place in terms of what we're doing, right? Like AA and I are not going to do the same mobility program because we're different individuals and we have different needs or specificity there. How we respond to different positions is going to change how much volume and intensity we can use. Just work through it, right? In that perspective, looking at that. Finally, we got a couple things that we got coming up here. So one, we had 3 events this year called Muscle Mentorship. Pretty stoked on this. This is the most immersive experience in the history of the world, where it's a year-round process where we get you access to our Slack account, where it's a really in-depth curriculum leading into a week of five days of 2-a-days with nutrition, supplements, and training. And, you know, just firsthand, I've done this now for the last 3 years. We sold out in May, but obviously things have changed. So we're going to expand our offerings up into 3 different ones. Any questions on that, you can check out this landing page or hit me up directly. For all Pen and Paper Strength app attendees, viewers, listeners, there's actually a 25% off discount code, quote, decent. So if you're interested and you want to learn more about it, hit me up or check out that page. Or if you just want to go straight for it, we have opportunities in June, September, and December. Discount code is decent, 25% off that. We have a program coming up here for some more advanced level athletes with a compromised schedule called the Phase Transition Program. We're going to get 20 sessions in 3 weeks, and it's basically muscle mentorship, just dedicated to someone who has to go to a preseason camp, which I'll be coaching that hands-on directly every single day because it's going to be a very serious training session. And the goal is to get 5 sessions week 1, 10 sessions week 2, and then 5 sessions week 3 to get some sort of GPP, really super compensation week, and then some sort of peaking by tapering by lowering the overall volume week, which more information is here at allegiantgym.com/PTP. And then the final one is we have internship programs. We do it on site and then we actually do it remotely. So if you have any interest in either, please let me know. We're always looking for really good help and for coaches who want to aspire to reach a higher level. And it helps us because we want to build up our farm system. And I think we're one of the few internship programs that can all but guarantee job placement with us or with someone else through our network. So if you're interested in that, check out that landing page and you can hit me up on that. And then finally, I'd like to say thank you to AA and Pen and Paper Strength app and the entire community. If you guys have anything you need from me, you can hit up Instagram, Allegiant Gym, or my email handle or my Instagram handle, Coach Tim Caron, and then my email address is right there. So thanks, AA. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and really, I really want to underline and put an explanation point on, potential interns. I've seen in 3 years over at Allegiant Gym, people that come in there, the quality and the education they get, and the hands-on coaching experience just to be around Tim and to do this at a more very collegiate setting type of atmosphere. It's second to none. And like I said, like Tim said, the guys that come through there and spend a summer or a fall or a spring, or some of them spend a longer time, they actually become coaches at Allegiant. It's really neat to see them grow. And like he said, their placement is 100%, where they're leaving that program and they're going on and being strength coaches at, tons of different types of settings. I appreciate you, Tim, coming on and sharing a decent amount of information there. And it was really good. We always want to introduce the next speaker. The next guy that will be here on Thursday, Coach Darren Mustin. Again, another guy that's very special to me. He's going to come in. He's going to he's going to tell you here what he's talking about. But I hope you guys can keep tuning in. and keep pushing people over to this power hour. It's just something that we're doing consistently on Tuesday, Thursdays to try to get some education, some great content out for strength coaches, anybody that's in the strength industry. We're trying to push strong content and then make it fun at the same time. Coach Mustin, it's you, man.
Thanks, Big A. T-Bone, that was awesome. I don't know what was stronger, the presentation, your shirt, or that mustache. It was great, man. What we're going to talk about in a couple of days is leaders and followers. Switch it up a little bit. I want to know why. I want to know why in this day and age we look at the word follower as a negative connotation. I want to know why our leaders looked at so powerfully. I want to know how. How did we come to this definition of leadership? What's the research say? How do they approach these effective leaders? I want to know what type of styles. Okay, I want to see what an actual effective leader looks like, and I also want to talk about the key ingredient. What is the key ingredient to effective leadership? Can't wait. See you guys on Thursday.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. Like I said, we're leading in. We're 48 hours. We're 47 hours from Darren's presentation now, so we'll be fired up on Thursday, guys. I appreciate it. We're going to wrap this up, and we will continue strong content here in a couple of days. Appreciate everything, guys.